Hey there, I'm Charlie, and welcome back to another episode of Accessible Adventures. Today we'll be exploring the new expansion of the Werribee Open Range Zoo in Victoria, Australia. Werribee Zoo was the first Zoos Victoria destination we explored together for the Accessible Adventures series back in 2024. But since then, it has undergone significant upgrades and expansions, so I thought it was only right for us to return and give you an updated review of the accessibility of the new development. As we've previously completed a full Accessible Adventures review on the Werribee Zoo, I invite you to watch that first as a refresher on the zoo's overall accessibility, as well as the specifics on arriving at and navigating the existing zoo structures. I've linked that video in the description below for your convenience. Additionally, I'd like to remind you of the dedicated accessibility page on their website, which I always recommend reading before you make your way out to the zoo. As always, there is also a link in the description if you'd like to check that out for yourself. If you have any questions though, the staff and volunteers at the zoo are all really kind and happy to help. Now that you've successfully made it to Werribee Zoo, following the parking and entry instructions of the previous video, it's time to talk about why we've returned. At the start of 2025, Werribee Open Range Zoo opened their new expansion, including a new 21-hectare enclosure for all 9 elephants from the Melbourne Zoo. This new habitat is not only a much better environment for the elephants, but it's also much larger. While previously housed on approximately 5 acres, their new enclosure is the equivalent size of the entire Melbourne Zoo. Obviously, this was a very big job that took a lot of time and money, but it is finally complete and open to the public. This new expansion is comprised of 2 walking trails, the Waterhole Trail and the Elephant Trail, both of which we will discuss and explore separately. But first, we need to talk a little bit more broadly. Due to the existing layout of the zoo and the amount of space needed for the new herds, the elephants are pretty far away from the rest of the animals. In fact, the Elephant Trail is actually connected to the rest of the zoo via the new Waterhole Trail, which is 750 meters long in each direction and made of a sandy dirt path. The Elephant Trail is a 1-kilometer loop that will lead you back to the Waterhole Trail. This means that the full length of the 2 new trails is 2.5 kilometers all up. Unsurprisingly, this does produce its own set of barriers when it comes to accessibility, but fortunately for us, the zoo has already considered this and taken steps to make the new habitats more accessible to those of us with mobility needs. In addition to the walking path through the Waterhole Trail, there is now a mobility buggy shuttle service to go to and from the Elephant Trail. I'll talk more about the shuttle service shortly, but first let's discuss the walking paths. Once you've arrived at the zoo and picked up your new map, it's time to start exploring. Just like the original pathways, the walking paths in the new expansion are predominantly flat and wide, aiming to accommodate both mobility aids and strollers. As I mentioned in the original Accessible Adventure video, there are manual wheelchairs available for free hire at the Werribee Zoo. They just require a refundable deposit of $20. There are also single and double strollers available for hire. However, if you need to book a wheelchair or stroller, I recommend booking in advance as there are limited numbers available. While there are several different types of pathways throughout the zoo, the vast majority of the pathways in the new expansion are comprised of sand or dirt. Most areas of the expansion are accessible via wheelchair, but some areas are harder to navigate and might not be accessible if you have mobility needs. I'll talk more about that later on though. Overall, I find the pathways to be very accessible for me in my electric wheelchair, but I definitely struggle in a few areas. While exploring the new trails, you may find yourself needing a rest more often as the trails are so long, so having adequate rest spots is important. Fortunately, there are a lot of benches around the new areas of the zoo, including some form of seating at most animal viewing areas, and there are multiple dining and picnic areas with additional seating as well. Additionally, the new expansion has a lot of drinking water filling stations and undercover rest areas, which is important because the trails themselves are completely uncovered and exposed to the elements, meaning it can be really hot under the Australian sun. I'll talk a little more about this later on though. When it comes to food or drink at the zoo, you can bring a picnic from home or grab a meal at the Meerkat Bistro or one of the many other eateries around the zoo. If you want to enjoy your lunch around the elephants though, in addition to the many picnic benches and grass areas to eat, there is a new eatery in the expansion, the Waterhole Cafe. Like most of the eateries around the zoo, there is a combination of hot and cold meals, snacks, coffee, ice cream and soft drinks. The Waterhole Cafe is an open plan eatery that includes an open air dining area and walk-up ordering and collection windows. It is wheelchair accessible and step-free. There isn't an accessible bathroom at the cafe itself, but there are 2 new toilet blocks on the Elephant Trail loop. Both toilet blocks contain combined accessible bathrooms and parenting rooms. The first toilet block is located next to the Waterhole Cafe and contains the slightly larger of the 2 accessible bathrooms. The bathroom is in good condition and reasonable size, with enough room to comfortably maneuver a mobility aid. The second toilet block contains a slightly smaller accessible bathroom located behind large sliding doors that enclose enclose the entire toilet block. This bathroom is also in good condition, but is noticeably smaller than the first, and thus a little harder to maneuver a mobility aid inside. If neither of these bathrooms is accessible to you, there are multiple other accessible bathrooms of different sizes around the zoo, all of which I have recorded in my original review, with the exception of the Changing Places bathroom located outside the front entrance of the zoo. This is the only bathroom at the zoo with an adult changing table, hoist, and shower. However, this bathroom does require an MLAC key to access. Now that we've talked about some of the basic infrastructure of the expansion, like pathways, bathrooms, and restaurants, it's time to talk about the two trails specifically, starting with the Waterhole Trail. As previously mentioned, the Waterhole Trail is a 750-meter long sandy dirt path. The trail is very wide, allowing multiple people with mobility aids or strollers the ability to safely pass each other or walk together. Along the pathway, there are multiple benches, rest points, water fill stations, and bins. There are also children's play areas with wooden equipment that encourages balance and focus, along with an influx of new artwork. The trail is lined periodically with new mosaic artworks of animals around the zoo, along with new metal models of the animals. The Waterhole Trail isn't just an interactive and pretty pathway to the elephant enclosures. It also houses 5 animal enclosures on the way, letting you view the zebras, camel, oryx, nyala, and the female ostriches. The pathway actually presses up against the existing safari tour area, so you can see into those enclosures as well as being seen by people passing by on the safari buses. You can also access the private safari tours from the Waterhole Trail. Of course, the main destination you access from the Waterhole Trail is the Elephant Trail. As stated, the Elephant Trail is a 1-kilometer loop comprising of 6 different habitats, 2 large swimming pools, and the new elephant barn where the keepers train and enrich the new herds of 9 Asian elephants. The trail goes both around and in between the new elephant enclosures, allowing the herds to travel independently through their habitats without human intervention. There are multiple habitat viewing areas, both covered and uncovered, as well as tunnels under elephant paths that are lined with murals, and a lot of interactive play and learning areas for children. There are more metal animal models showing the actual size comparison of an Asian and African elephant. There are so many opportunities to view and learn about the elephants, regardless of where they are playing or spending their time, which makes it a much better experience for us and the elephants alike. Just like on the Waterhole Trail, the pathways are very wide, primarily sandy dirt, and predominantly flat. This provides the most accessibility to the trail while maintaining the overall landscape of the new habitats, which is important not only for the elephant's health, but also their communication, as they use vibrations through the ground to communicate, and concrete or paved ground inhibits their ability to do so. Overall, this is a really lovely, picturesque addition to the zoo, and it's definitely great for the elephants who now call this place home. However, as previously mentioned, this does produce some additional accessibility barriers. To help combat these barriers, the zoo has introduced its new mobility buggy shuttle service. This mobility buggy shuttle is free for anyone who may need it. If you struggle taking large steps, they have portable step blocks to help people enter or exit the buggies, and they have dedicated wheelchair accessible buggies as well. The wheelchair accessible buggies have a fold down ramp on one side which you can use to get on or off the buggy. However, you do need to transfer from your wheelchair to a seat with a seat belt for the duration of the ride. You don't need to book ahead to use a buggy regardless of whether you need a wheelchair accessible one or not. There is a waiting area with shade cover behind the meerkat enclosure just past the entrance to the zoo where you can go if you want to take the buggy. There are staff who will drive the buggies each direction throughout the day, so you just need to wait for the next available buggy and they will drive you. The signs advise a maximum wait time of 20 to 30 minutes, but it's not really possible to know how long the wait would be exactly. The pathway the buggy takes is in a ranger only area of the zoo, so you actually get a little behind the scenes glimpse of some of the staff areas, which is another fun little bonus. But I also think this brings us nicely to our next topic of the accessibility review, the pain points. I know I haven't been quiet about my love of Werribee Zoo, but that doesn't mean I won't acknowledge its pain points when it comes to accessibility. Overall, I think the new zoo expansion is very accessible, but I wouldn't feel right not to share the challenges as well. Number one, we need to talk about pathways. The pathways of both new trails are made of sandy dirt. While I understand why this choice was made, there is no getting around the fact that it does reduce the accessibility. There are a lot of problems with sand or dirt pathways when it comes to accessibility. Firstly, it's uneven. Whether you're walking independently, using a cane or a walker, or even in a wheelchair, uneven terrain can be a big issue. Uneven pathways of sand and dirt are particularly rough because they shift over time. Right now, the pathways are new and the sand and dirt is loose. That means that it's uneven and you can sink in certain areas and get stuck, especially if you're using a mobility aid. I got stuck in ditches and needed Ian to help lift me and my wheelchair out of them multiple times on our first visit. Now, over time, the ground will be compressed by all the people who walk or stand on it. This will lead to a peak moment of accessibility once the ground is compressed enough that you stop sinking into soft earth, but that won't last forever. After the ground is compressed, it will start to wear away. Through regular use, weather, wind, etc., the ground will become firm but uneven with holes or divots throughout. This will create more opportunities for people using mobility aids to get stuck or even injured, as the pathways won't be consistent or even enough to be used safely. The next major problem with having loose sandy dirt pathways is weather related. When it rains, this will produce mud, puddles, even bogs that people could get stuck in or injured by. Additionally, it can also really dirty up the wheels of a wheelchair, which is a problem when you leave the zoo, because unlike your muddy shoes, you can't necessarily leave your dirty wheels at the door. The biggest weather related concern for the pathways is actually wind though. Regardless of whether you have accessibility concerns or not, you will be affected once the wind starts to pick up on those trails, which it does easily as there aren't yet adequate wind blocks like trees, which have been planted but will take a long time to grow. When the wind picks up, it takes with it all the sand and dirt, blowing it through the air like a dust storm. While exploring the new trails, we had at least a dozen occasions of wind picking up and blowing sand and dust and dirt into our faces. Unfortunately, even when the pathways are compressed and the trees grow more to provide more wind blocks, this will still be an issue as the elephants' habitats are also largely dirt and sand. Once the trees do grow and provide more wind protection, they will also provide more shade and sun protection. As the trails are currently laid out, outside of the undercover rest area and picnic points, you are completely out in the open, exposed to all the elements. So I definitely recommend sunscreen, sunglasses, hats, and water bottles that you can fill up around the trail as necessary to help protect you from the elements. This brings us to my second main pain point of the new expansion, the mobility buggy service. I want to clarify that I am beyond thrilled that the new buggy system exists, especially the wheelchair accessible buggies, but they aren't actually accessible for all wheelchair users. As we were advised, we had to transfer out of the wheelchair for the duration of the shuttle ride. This blocks accessibility for some people. You enter the buggy via a ramp in the middle of the side, which places you perpendicular to the seats. There isn't much space to turn your chair or dedicated transfer bars to help you move from your wheelchair to the fixed seating. Additionally, there aren't any anchor points to attach your wheelchair to the buggy floor, so beyond applying your brakes, there's nothing you can do to stop your wheelchair shifting during the ride. I also don't know if the staff will allow you to stay in your wheelchair if you're unable to transfer out. I intended to ask this on our most recent visit to the zoo to film for this video, but unfortunately found the wheelchair accessible buggies weren't running at all. Assuming you are able to transfer safely and actually use the buggies provided, there are still other factors to consider. If you do use these buggies, you won't be able to access the waterhole trail. Obviously, this is a trade-off that may well be worth it to you, but I feel it should be addressed. Of course, if you are able to, you could take the mobility buggy one way and walk the other so that you can view both trails without overdoing it mobility-wise, but that's not a perfect solution. Obviously, some people won't have that option and will require the buggy in both directions, so they will miss out on experiencing the waterhole trail altogether. If this is you, I really recommend using the buggy service each way so that you can enjoy the new elephant trail, and then go on the free safari tour, which is also wheelchair accessible, which will allow you to see the waterhole trail from the safari bus and the animals as well. I always recommend the free safari at Werribee Zoo regardless, because it's a wonderful addition to your zoo trip and completely accessible. All the details about the tour are in my original accessible adventure review of the Werribee Zoo if you'd like to check that out. Finally, as there is no set schedule or booking process for the mobility shuttles, you really have no way of knowing how long you'll have to wait for the buggy at each end of the trail. This can be really hard for people who need to plan or schedule their day more specifically, if they have private tours booked or need to leave or eat or take medications at certain times. Additionally, as there's no way of letting the staff know you are there waiting, it can feel a little bit like you're forgotten about in the heat, which can be quite distressing for people, especially those with anxiety or neurodivergence. Personally, I think that a simple switch or button to call a shuttle or notify the drivers that someone is waiting would be a great addition to help efficiency and peace of mind for people involved. I would be much more comfortable waiting if I knew that someone else knew I was there, especially as the undercover waiting area isn't actually viewable from the buggy parking area. I just feel like this is a bit of an oversight for an otherwise great addition to the zoo. Once you've finished exploring the new trails and the zoo as a whole, my personal final stop is always the gift shop. As I shared in my original review, the gift shop is completely step-free and really accessible. During the day, you can also leave the zoo from the gift shop, where you will find yourself right by the main entrance. All in all, despite the challenges and accessibility barriers I faced, I still love the Werribee Open Range Zoo and encourage you to check out the new expansions. Werribee Zoo is a great place to visit for an accessible adventure, and the free safari bus is an absolute must. I highly encourage you to review all of the accessibility information they have on their website, as it really is quite thorough. Once again, the link is in the description along with my original Accessible Adventures review of the zoo. If you have any questions about the zoo or my experience, please drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. Also, if there's any information that you think would be helpful for you in my next accessibility video, please let me know and I'll do my best to include it. I'm also open to suggestions of places you'd like me to review. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you liked it. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on another accessible adventure coming soon. I hope you're having an amazing day and I can't wait to see you all again soon. Bye!